think this is the last one before we get through the hot topics, the last section, I believe. So we're going to talk about zoning districts, principal uses, and accessory uses. The way your zoning districts and principal uses are set up has been changed pretty significantly. If you ever read through your code, and I don't know why you would, but if you did, you'd look through your code and you'd see, district B1, B2, B3, and each one of them would contain like a laundry list of uses. So, antique store, art supply store, convenience store, hobby store. I'll throw haberdashery in there. That's my favorite zoning code word. I don't think it's actually in here, but just very detailed, long list of uses in each district. It's very unwieldy. It's very hard to compare districts to understand what the differences are and whether it was even intentional or not, or if perhaps a list was just left off, or an item was just left off these long lists. So we did two things. We consolidated a lot of these uses. So rather than listing all those individual uses, particularly for commercial districts, we collapsed them into broader categories, like retail businesses, personal and commercial services. And within those categories, they're being treated the same. If there was a use that we felt needed its own special attention or different kind of approval process, we pulled it out and it's separately listed in the code. Visually, you'll also see a big difference. Instead of those big laundry lists, we now have a table. It enables really easy comparison across districts and helps us be really consistent and very intentional about the way things are listed in each district. We've also added a new approval type. Right now you have permitted or special use. Permitted is the easiest pathway. Special use is one of the more challenging pathways. We've kind of created an intermediate area between those two. It's called permitted with standards. So these are uses that you generally want, but they've got a couple of issues that you want to make sure are addressed. So instead of doing it on a case-by-case basis as a special use, you just lay out those standards in advance, and the people are expected to meet them, and if they do, then it's an easier approval process. Oh, and we also recommended some other smaller recommendations from the downtown study that we've incorporated. We've lowered the minimum lot area per unit for some of the multi-family products in the downtown. We've eliminated some standards that were kind of arbitrarily restricting the number of units that could be on the floor of a building. We've also updated the regulations to enable more very small scale multifamily development. The plans talked a lot about development that has 6 to 8 units. You might think of it as a 6 flat, like a 3-story walk-up type building, or it could take many different forms, and we've addressed that. One of the ways that we've addressed that is we've created a new zoning district. We called it RMM for missing middle, which was a big topic of some of these other plans. The intention of this is to allow for small-scale multifamily, like duplexes, row houses, properties with 6 units or less. And nothing is being preemptively rezoned by the city. The idea is this is a zoning district on paper right now. If there is a property owner who is in the right circumstance who would like to apply for it, they are welcome to, assuming this is in the final version of the code. It's intended to be like a transitional area between single family and other intense districts. So if there's a property between single family and a multifamily, or between single family and some type of commercial product, this is seen as the ideal opportunity for something like this. Let's see. Another goal coming out of some of those plans was to improve the quality of the B1 neighborhood business districts. Some of them are doing pretty well, some are not. They face many challenges, but one of them is the restricted uses that are allowed within them. So we've increased the types of uses that can be in those districts, but we've also added standards to make them more compatible. In some cases, restricting the size of the tenant or the hours of operation. I think we also worried about the delivery times. I think that's district-wide. So we tried to increase the opportunities for different types of businesses to occupy those spaces, but also trying to make sure that they're also compatible with the neighboring properties. Another major change is the idea of short-term rentals. Some people call them Airbnb or VRBO. There's all different kinds of companies that do this. It's really just a newer version of a bed and breakfast, which you've had in place, at least in the past. So the current code language is language proposes allowing these as a special use, which again is one of those kind of more challenging approval processes. But there's also, along with that, there's also very strict standards. Some of them are listed here. Requires owner occupancy. It requires limiting the number of bedrooms based on the zoning district, requiring parking on site, requiring annual inspections, and limiting the number of short-term rentals to no more than one per block. Want to talk about accessory?
So the last of the hot topics we're going to talk about is about the accessory uses and structures. Similar to the principal uses that Ann just spoke about, we tried to simplify this so that anybody could be able to pick up this code and understand it, because with a community like Kirkwood that's largely built out, one of the issues in zoning that you're never going to stop having to deal with is accessory uses, people wanting to build their play sets, their patios, detached garages and the like. So we've taken pieces of the current code on accessory uses that are scattered throughout it and consolidated into one article, and used the use table to help expand on what is allowed and is not allowed. We did the same thing with the principal uses, where certain ones are permitted, some are permitted with some additional standards, and some are special uses. So we really did look at trying to make it easy for residents and businesses to pick up and see what is allowed. And we kept things like the outdoor seating and the outdoor dining options. I would say two of the biggest changes, and this was kind of related also from the comprehensive plan, but also concerns we've heard about from the public. The one that's kind of related to the site development standards as far as bulk, height, and setbacks was the where accessory buildings are. And there were a number of people who have identified issues with large accessory buildings, 2 stories and the like, being set very close, 5 feet from the setback lines. Adjacent to much smaller properties, so overshadowing them. So in working with the committee, what we did is we established that if any accessory building goes over 15 feet in height, or if it has a very long wall plane, so it's over 25 feet in any one particular direction, it will have to meet the setbacks of the principal structure. So we're going to push the bigger accessory buildings further back. Now, we did not change how much and the total amount of accessory buildings allowed in any one district. So currently you're allowed 7% of the lot, or 1,500 square feet, whichever is less. That ratio did not change. We just made the setbacks a little bit more restrictive when you get to the larger size. The other change we did is the accessory dwelling units, and those are secondary dwelling units on certain lots. And this came from the direction of the comprehensive plan, as well as we did ask questions related to this at the public survey, on the online survey, and at the public meeting. And these have a range of things. The city is seeing an increase in requests for these. A lot of people wanting their, parents or their kids to live on the same lot. We understand that there are some issues, and this is why it's a hot topic. But going back and trying to deal with the issues of the people who want this ideally, and also the concerns about, could those be rental and the such, is we try to come up with a balance of restrictions that, they couldn't be on every lot, but they could be considered. And so what we came up with is that these accessory dwelling units would only be allowed on lots that are 15,000 square feet or larger. The property owner would have to live in one of the units, and so there's an owner occupancy on these lots. The maximum size of the individual dwelling unit building would be 750 square feet, and also no matter what, if it's in a separate building, it would have to meet the setbacks of the principal structure. So if you've got an existing garage or an existing pool house that is 5 feet from the property lines, but you want to do an accessory dwelling unit, you can't just convert that. You would have to tear it down and push in to meet the setbacks. So existing buildings cannot be used if they don't meet these particular standards. So that was, again, one of those ones that we know, the 73% of the people on the online survey said, yes, we would like to see this with some strong standards. The public meeting, we asked a particular question about this, so this was trying to find that balance. And then the rest of it was, again, just a lot of clarification of existing accessory uses, particularly for commercial uses that were allowed. So with that, I think we are at the end of the hot topics. Justin, you gonna?
Yeah. So we are going to take, in kind of perfect timing, we got 5 minutes to the hour. We're going to take 5 minutes to let you all sort of digest and think about what, if you've got a question that you don't feel was answered, or you would like some clarification or anything like that with regards to these hot topic items, that's what your that's what your question card is for. The yellow card is for questions. When you have questions, just, are we going to walk around and, yeah, we'll walk around and collect those. And so just raise your hand. You don't have to get up out of your seat and be like everyone rushing back. So give you about 5 minutes.